Hello, my name is Cameron Mose, and this is my project on women's ongoing push for equal rights. This is a significant topic because it affects the entire country both directly and indirectly. I will be using the 14th and 19th Amendment and various Supreme Court cases over the span of almost 130 years to show just how important it is. Women used to be treated like nothing. They were thought to only be suitable for making babies, cooking, and keeping the house clean. Men had this sad thinking and used it to mistreat women. Unfortunately, they were also running the country, so women did not have the ability to drive, own land or a bank account without their husband's signature, vote, have any say over their bodies, or even get a job. Thankfully, a group of women finally stood up and made their voices heard. This began what we now consider to be the first wave of feminism, and eventually led to the 19th Amendment being passed in 1920, which stated that voters should not be denied on the basis of sex. One of the earliest cases of a woman pushing to be able to vote came all the way back in 1875. Virginia Minor was a suffrage leader in Missouri who attempted to register to vote in October of 1872. She argued that since she was a citizen, she had the right to vote. She was ultimately ruled against in the Missouri Supreme Court because the 14th Amendment, which was passed in 1866, restricted voting rights to men only. Although she could not get the laws changed, she started the movement for women to push for equality. The next case is Corning Glass versus Brennan. This case looked at the difference in pay between women of the company who were only allowed to work on the day shift and the men who worked on the night shift. The Equal Pay Act of 1963 was the reason for the Supreme Court to rule that employees should get paid the same, since the working conditions were significantly similar. Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health was a case brought to the Supreme Court over the banning of abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy in Mississippi. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 to uphold the law. It also led to the overturning of Roe versus Wade by 5-4. Roe versus Wade, which was passed in 1973, ruled that overly restrictive laws against abortion were unconstitutional. Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health set women's reproductive rights back almost 50 years and forced women to continue to fight to get their rights back and heavily restricted what women could do with their own bodies. Moving on to some of the major sources I used. The first being an article from the New York Tribune in 1920 that estimated over 26 million women would go out to vote in the next election. This article laid out the numbers by state and compared the number of females and males over the age of 21, which was the age to vote back then. This article was a good starting point to show how women could impact elections. The next major source was a book titled Muller versus Oregon. This book laid out historical documents from 1920 to 1941 from women writing in newspapers and asking the Supreme Court questions, giving concerns and suggestions they had about the Equal Rights Amendment and equality. The next was a research report on some of the most famous Supreme Court cases regarding reproduction and abortion. This also showed legislation and how it has changed, but how far American women still need to come in order to have full choice over their own body. Lastly was a book titled Cash Flow about the business of menstruation. Cash Flow talked about the infamous pink tax and how this has affected women, not only here in America, but all over the world. It highlighted the changes women have had to endure and inventions they have had to make so they could properly take care of their own body in the most sanitary and healthy way. The fact that there are significant Supreme Court cases from 3 different centuries shows just how clear it is that women are still working for equal rights. The photo you see on the right-hand side at the top is from 1977 during a women's rights march. The banner that is being held up says equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on the account of sex. The photo under that shows a handful of women in political positions after the House had passed a resolution to remove the Equal Rights Amendment deadline in Washington in March of 2021. While these 2 pictures show that there has been change in women's rights because women now have voting rights and have the ability to hold jobs, especially those of power, there are still more steps to take in order for women to get true equal rights in America.